Kelim Perikut Base, Mishnah Base. We're carrying on now with Kelim, which are a mixture of metal and wood. And the rule is, whenever you have a Keli made out of different materials, then it's the one which is the Iker, the one which is Oisei HaMalacha, the one which does the job, is the one which determines whether this Keli is a Kli Matches or a Kli Eitz. We're now dealing with, first of all, a very complicated contraption called a Kone Moznaim Shel Surukos. Let me explain before I show you the picture. We've had before a Keli, for instance, if you have a menorah made out of one material and made out of wood, and you have the perach of the menorah, which is the ikka, the keli at the top on which you put the oil, that's made out of metal. Then you go boss of the ikka kli, it's quite obvious that the perach is the ikka, and even if the perach is by itself, even when it's not attached to the menorah, that's the kli tashmish, that's the kli matras, and that's the one which is mekabel tumah. We're now dealing with basically a kli eitz, where the kli eitz itself is not mekabel tumah, but teres kli eitz, because it hasn't got a base kibble. However, it's got some very important metal components. These metal components are the ikar of the kli, and therefore they render the whole kli, change the whole kli into being a kli matras. The difference here is that these metal parts are important to the extent that they make the whole kli into kli matras. However, if they just have them by themselves they have no tashmish whatsoever. So when they are away, unattached from the kli eitz, they're tar because they have no use at all. So let's repeat it. We have a mixture of a kli which is a kli eitz. It has metal bits. The metal bits are the most important. The kli is makabel tumah when it's all together, when it's all attached. Because of the metal bit, the whole thing gets a shem of a kli matras. However, if you were to take these little metal bits off, because they're so small and useless, therefore by themselves they have no use at all. They only have a use when they're attached to the kli eitz. And what we're dealing here is a koneh moznaim shel tzrukos. It's a scale. It's used to. It's a weighing machine, a weighing contraption to weigh bundles of wool. Tzrukos are people who card wool, who comb them, and basically it's a kli eitz. It's a wooden kli. I'll show you the picture, and it's a little bit complicated. You can see here. This whole contraption here is all made out of wood. And there's a chain down here. And at the bottom of the chain are hooks. Metal hooks. And it's those metal hooks which the Mishnah calls unkios. Unkelios. And the Mishnah says, Kone maznaim shel sorukos. Tome mipnei unkelios, because of the unkelios. All the rest is wood. And therefore, the kli eitz, it's not a kli eitz. Well, it is a kli eitz. It's not a kli eitz which is mekabel tumah because there's no base kibble. However, because of the onkelios, which are made out of metal, the whole thing gets a din of kli matches. Although, if you took the onkelios off, they themselves have no use at all. And therefore, as the Sefer of the Mishnah says, if you took them off, when they are by themselves, they are tar. Join it all together, the whole thing gets a din of kli matches because of the unklios shel mateches. Basically, what happens here, you have the bag of wool being held by the chain. There's a pole here. You suspend it there, and then this balances over here. Depending how heavy this bag is, you have a weight, and the heavier that is, the further away you've got to pull that weight to the right of the page to make it balance. And there are measurements on here which determine, depending on how far you pull it away, you can then see how much this weighs. Says the Mishnah carries on, Mashal Baalei Botim. However, if the same contraption is used for Baalei Botim, who don't necessarily have these hooks, they just tie amateurly. They just tie whatever they want to weigh to the bottom of the chain without any metal hooks. Then it depends. Im yesh boy unklios, generally, Bartanura says generally they don't have unklios. That's why the Mishnah says this expression. If it's a type of homemade or domestic scales, which have unclears, then it'll follow the same rules of the konim Islam shel tzrukos, and they will be tomei because of the metal hooks. The Mishnah carries on more with hooks. Unkelin shel katofin. A katof is a porter, people who carry things, heavy loads on their back. They have a wooden pole behind their neck or across their shoulder. And at the end of the wooden pole is not makabel tumah because it's a klietz. However, there are two hooks, one at the front, one at the back, on which they tie the thing they want to carry. Tohira, because here the ikr is the metal pole. That's the thing which takes the weight, and the hook is regarded as just being ancillary, is just being meshamish the ikr of the wood. Therefore it's mateches hameshamesh eso-eitz, and in this case, because the eitz is tohir, because it's a kli eitz without a base kibble, therefore the unklios, the hooks, are also tohir. Even when it's attached, the whole thing does not have a shem kli matches because the ikr is the wood. If this contraption, this pole, this carrying pole with the hooks, belongs to a peddler, people going around the towns, a mendicant, goes around from town to town selling little objects, their hooks are more chashuv than the hooks of the unklin of the katofin. Why, says Baal Tanura? Because penish yeshlo base kibble. Not that a kli matches needs to have a base kibble, but the fact that these little receptacles at the end of the pole have a little cup-like structure, so they can put things in it, that gives a chashivas to those metal bits, and therefore we now change the importance of the kli is now moved from the eitz part to the matchus part, and the whole thing gets a din of kli matchus. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, depends which hook. In the case of the Rochalim, depends which these little hooks, these cup-like little hooks, he says depends which one. In the case of the Rochalim, Shalafonov Tameh, the one in front is the Ikka. V'shal Achrov Torah, the one behind, is not so important. The difference being, as we're only talking about a case where the hook, the metal hook, renders it a kli matchus only when it's attached to the pole, the Mishnah must mean Shalafonov Tmeah, if the metal hook is the one in the front and the one at the back, for instance, is not made out of metal, then it's Tomei, because the whole thing gets a din of Shem Matches, because the Ikka is the unkli, or the unkli at the front. However, if the one at the front, for instance, is broken or made out of wood, and only the one at the back is made out of Matches, the one at the back hasn't got the chashivas to call the whole thing a Kli Matches. And the next bit of the Mishnah is actually, again, talking about hooks. And the rule is very simple. If the hook is attached to a kli, which is makabel tumah, then the hook is part of that kli and is makabel tumah with the kli. In other words, it's a chibur to the kli. Because remember, this Mishnah is talking about hooks which, in the case where they're unattached, have no chashivas at all, as the last line of the Mishnah says, "V'kulan achas achas b'fnei atzman tahiros." So the ikka of the Mishnah is, when the hook is attached to a kli which is makabel tumah, and it sounds like this hook isn't always attached. You can take it off and put it on. When it's attached, it's called a chibur, and it's makabel tumah with the rest of the kli. However, if the hook is attached to a kli which is not makabel tumah, then the hook follows suit, and just like the kli, the ikra kli is not makabel tumah, the hook as well is not makabel tumah. So we'll go through the cases. Unkle dargash tumeh. Dargash is a bed, and the hook is actually used to tie up. They used to weave ropes to form the base of the bed, on which you can put your mattress or your straw, and those hooks serve the dargash. And because the dargash is makabel tumah, even though it's made out of wood, because any kli eitz which is a royal and medras, which is made for lying and sitting on, is makabel tumah. Therefore, the hook which serves that bed is tomei, but again only when it's connected to the bed. V'shana klitin tahira. A klitin we know from the Mishnah and Sukkah. This is a bed on which one wants to spread a canopy over. So at the edge of the bed, there's a pole at the front of the bed, one pole in the middle at the front, and one pole in the middle at the back, like this. And then across the top of the pole is put a horizontal pole, on which one spreads a tent-like urea to form this covering. So, The bed itself, we're not talking about. These naklitin are removable from the bed. The naklitin are made out of wood. The naklitin are not mechuba to the bed. You just attach them to the bed whenever you need them. But basically, they're generally not mechuba. So the naklitin themselves are not mekabel tumah because they're kli eitz and not able to be mekabel tumah because they don't have a base kibble. At the end of these two naklitin, there are two little hooks on which one puts a rail. But the naklitin, the hooks serve the naklitin. And just like the naklitin are tahor, therefore the hook which serves them is a chibur to a davar which is tahor, and therefore the hook is not mekabel tumah either. Similarly, shel shidot met. Shida is a wooden chest. Of course, a wooden chest is mekabel tumah. The hook attached to the wooden chest is mekabel tumah with the shida. V'shel ikun tahira. Ikun is a large sort of wooden box in which one traps fish. Either it's tahor because it's got such massive holes in it and therefore it's not called osel kibble, or because it's enormous and it follows the rule that when a kli eitz is enormous, if it's machzik memsar is tahor, this ikun is tahor, therefore the hook which is attached to the ikun is also tahor. Similarly, shulchan tomei, shulchan is mekabel tumah, therefore a hook which is attached to the table is mekabel tumah with the table. Shal menorah sa'etz tahor. If you just have a menorah sa'etz with no kibble, a wooden candelabra, that is not mekabel tumah. It's a kli poshet. A hook attached to such a menorah will follow the rule, as the Mishnah says, a hook which is attached to a kli tomei is mekabel tumah with the kli. A mechuba tar. If it's a mechuba to a kli, tar is tar. Remember, we're not dealing with hooks which have been attached to the kli by the original manufacturer. That's a poshet, that's mekabel tumah with the kli. We're talking about hooks which are removed and put on as we need them. The kulon achas bifnei asman. In all these cases, the hooks by themselves, taken off the kli, do not have a specific function, and therefore the hooks by themselves, one by one, tahiris, are all tahir. That was Mishnah base.